Nightmare is one of the best bosses in the game for money currently. Using an ult to run supplies for you while using higher end gear with maxed combat can make you 12 mil GP an hour on average. Without an ult, Nightmare is still pretty good money, but you will spend a lot of time hopping worlds as it's extremely crowded. Nightmare has horrible regular drops, but incredibly valuable rare drops. Fighting this boss is the equivalent of playing scratch-off lottery tickets, but when you get a drop, the payout is massive. The Harmonized Orb is over 1.5 bill currently, and the Inquisitor's Mace is 950 mil. Every drop by the Nightmare staff is over 150 mil. Fighting Nightmare as a group is actually a pretty easy boss to fight, but solo turns Nightmare into a 20-minute endurance match. I still wouldn't call the boss hard, but it definitely is punishing if you mess something up, as getting KO'd at the end is about 300k in supplies on top of the 60k reclaim fee and 20 minutes of your life gone. It takes about 34 hours to get a drop on average, so that's going to cost you about 10 mil in supplies on average. So make sure you have a decent cash stack before you start this grind. You're also going to need some fairly good gear to get you through a solo, so let's take a look at that. Like I said, Nightmare is an endurance match, so the focus is weapons that can sustain your health. Nightmare has extremely high defense to everything but crush, so your main DPS is going to be a Bludgeon with bandos and max melee. The Mythical Cape is about 3% more DPS than a Fire Cape here, so always wear that. Infernal Cape beats Mythical Cape if you have it. If you can afford it, the best gear you can wear is full Inquisitors with the Inquisitor's Mace. The Mace alone is a 5% DPS increase over a Bludgeon, with full Inquisitors that shoots up to a 12.5% difference. I wouldn't use a Scythe here, as it is only 4.5% more DPS than a Bludgeon, and the cost to use it does not justify its slight DPS boost. You can downgrade some armor pieces, but the fight will be tougher. I would highly recommend at least bringing the Bludgeon if trying to solo. A Hasta is 6% worse DPS, and a Sarachnis Cudgel is 8% worse. A Blood Fury is incredibly good here. I didn't test it personally, but on average it will heal you 360 health over the duration of the kill, the equivalent of 5 Saradomin brews. Paired with a Sang Staff and an SGS, that should basically negate the need for food. A Sanguine SD Staff paired with SGS and Blood Fury should allow 2 kill trips to be possible on one inventory. At the beginning of a kill, you will have full special attack, and that will be fully restored by Totem Phase. The Bludgeon spec with low prayer is actually significantly more DPS than Claws, so the best option is to drop one Claw spec, wait until that energy has charged back up and you have lost some prayer points, then Bludgeon spec once. If you're using a different weapon, just dump both Claw specs. Dragon Warhammer is usually not worth bringing in a solo, but in a group, having one person take Hammer is a very good idea. Her defense does not go below 120, and her defense is restored each phase, so only one spec is needed for the maximum defense strain each phase. For inventory, this is what I bring. A 4-way Mage Switch, Occult, God Cape, Tormented Bracelet, and Sang Staff with Imbued Heart. It's impossible to splash on the totems, even with negative magic attack, so your Mage bonus is completely irrelevant, including Augury. Just leave your boost prayers off. All that matters is damage. The Imbued Heart is incredibly good for solos. Phases last so long you can use it basically each time you get to totems. It's a 15% DPS boost when you use it, so definitely bring that if you can afford it. I would bring, and should have in the footage, 1 piece of Ancestral for a further 4% DPS boost. 2 pieces of Ancestral doesn't give you a max hit at 99 magic, but all 3 does give an additional max hit for another 4% DPS. If you feel comfortable with your supplies, you can take the full Ancestral set. The Sang Staff here is insanely good, as the totems can proc its heal effect, and your max hit is over 80. There are times when you get some lucky Sang Staff procs on high hits, and it will heal you back to full health. Harm Staff with Fire Surge does beat the Sang's DPS significantly, even with an Imbued Heart, so if you can bring this, just skip the heart. Saradomin Godsword is incredibly good here as well, as after totems you can spec the Sleepwalkers with it, and it will always count as your max hit, giving you a massive heal and prayer restore. I also bring Claws because I happen to have them. These are incredibly good for killing the parasites ASAP, but not necessary by any means. I bring 3 Sandfews as you need them to shrug off the parasites. I used about 2.5 Sandfew potions on average per kill, so if going for double kill trips, you will need at least 5 Sandfews. If you are comfortable with your supplies, you can swap some of these out for Relicum's Balm instead to save money. I bring 10 brews, 3 super combats, and 5 super restores. Double kill trips will likely require you to swap some brews for more super combats and restores. I wouldn't take a teleport, as that just wastes inventory space and you want as many potions as you can pack in. Just teleport to Clan Wars after a kill. Before I get into the fight itself, I want to discuss how to get there and how to find a world. The most simple way to get there is a teleport to the Theater of Blood using a Draken's Medallion. You can bank the medallion and pre-pot an Angler and Stamina dose. If you don't use a Stamina, you'll be walking a good portion of the way there, so make sure you do that. Then run north into Sleep, entering the dungeon, and running east to get to Nightmare. It's quite a long distance, which is part of why ults are so incredibly good here. Your other option to get here is use Ectophile and take the boat to the north. This costs 10k coins, or you can pay a one-time fee of 1 mil GP. This brings you to the dock just north of TOB, making the distance slightly shorter. However, this does waste an inventory space on an Ectophile, so I probably would just use the route from TOB. Nightmare is incredibly packed currently due to the insane GP rates the boss provides. I often would hop through all of the worlds on my native ping and not find an open world. This is the main reason ults are so good here, as they allow you to hold a world indefinitely. A free world will show Nightmare slumped on the ground. A world where people have entered but not started the fight yet will show a floating Nightmare with a slumped head. If people are actively fighting the boss, Nightmare will be floating with their head to the ceiling. You can tell the phase people are in by the symbol underneath Nightmare. The Oni mask indicates they are on phase 1. The yin yang indicates they are on phase 2. And the spiked symbol with 3 teardrops indicates they are on the final phase. When hopping, I will often look for this spiked symbol and then right-click Inspect Nightmare to see if it's a solo. Typically, people leave after 1 kill in a solo, so you know the world will be free soon. You can also spectate to see how close they are to done with a kill. It is impossible to enter once the fight has started, so people can't crash you. Once you have found a world, enter to start the kill. You have 40 seconds before the fight begins. Let's go over Nightmare's basic attacks first. She uses all 3 attack styles, magic, ranged, and rarely melee. Her magic attack flops her arms back and forth with a red glow around her shooting a small red orb. Her ranged attack cracks her bones 3 times and then flings bone shards at you. For her melee, she leans back, placing her hands on the ground and scrapes them towards you. This melee attack is a lot rarer than her ranged and mage attacks. You have about 3 ticks to react to her ranged and mage attacks and get your prayer up before they hit you. Well, for her melee attack, you have about 2 ticks, as it is much faster. Once a projectile has been thrown at you, it is too late to get your prayer up, as its damage has already been calculated against you. Correctly praying against these attacks reduces the damage by about 75%. The max hits of these attacks are over 40, melee being her most dangerous attack maxing over a 50, so you need to catch majority of these attacks with the correct prayer for a kill to be possible. Game sounds can be helpful, as these have extremely obvious sound cues. In a solo, you will be taking what in a group would be called the tank roll. The easiest way to do this is after an attack has hit you, swap back to melee, as it is the hardest attack to catch and the most dangerous. In a group, Nightmare picks a target based on their defense bonuses and defense level, as well as what prayer they are using. But as you are in a solo, you will always be the target, so you don't need to worry about that. In a group, only the tank needs to worry about melee attacks, as the rest can sit safely behind Nightmare. But in a solo, you will always need to be prepared to protect from melee attacks. I would recommend having at least 2 of the 3 healing items for a solo. SGS is less helpful than Sang Staff and Blood Fury, but 2 of these 3 are still enough to secure kills. Nightmare also has a special attack that replaces her regular attacks occasionally, Grasping Claws, which she can use during any phase. She will form black portals around the arena and underneath her, reaching her hands into them and hitting you for up to a 60 if you are on top of them. Walking under her during this time will also incur the full damage. She will almost always spawn a portal underneath you, so you have about 3 ticks to move away. The attack is only active for 1 tick when the hands come out of the portals, so you can immediately click back at this point or run under her if you need to. The best option is to immediately sidestep these and continue attacking Nightmare so as to not waste ticks. After reducing her 2000 HP to 0, Nightmare will lose her shield and you can no longer traditionally damage her. You're now going to want to swap into your magic gear, pop your imbued heart if you have it, and start damaging the totems in each corner. Turn your boost prayer off completely, as it will do nothing but waste prayer during this phase. Augury does literally nothing. Your Sang Staff will heal you a ton during this phase, so try not to heal to full so you can get the most out of it. Nightmare continues to use normal attacks and all phase special attacks even while attacking the totems, so continue evading as you did earlier. After charging all 4 totems, Nightmare will be damaged for 1/3 of her health and teleported into the middle, spawning a Sleepwalker for each person in the fight. Obviously, in a solo, this means you only get 1 Sleepwalker. Take this opportunity to pull out your SGS and spec the Sleepwalker for a massive heal. The heal is higher if you are combat potted with your full melee gear on and have piety on. If you don't have an SGS, stay in your mage gear and attack the Sleepwalker so you have more time to hit it. If you do not manage to attack the Sleepwalker before it reaches Nightmare, she will hit you for a massive 74 damage. If you kill it first, this damage is reduced to 5. After this, the next phase will start, repeating until the third set of totems is charged, killing the Nightmare. In a group setting, if Piety gives you enough defense to take the tank role, you can actually flick it on occasionally to force Nightmare to walk towards you, then turn it off when she gets near to avoid all melee attacks. You can also safe spot her below the north pillars by standing just south of the pillar, avoiding all melee attacks. Nightmare has 3 phases with unique special attacks. Flower phase is phase 1, Parasite phase is phase 2, and what I like to call Truck phase is phase 3. Phase 2 is by far the hardest phase, with phase 1 being a close second, and phase 3 being by far the easiest. Each phase has 2 unique special attacks used only during that phase. She typically does a phase-specific attack every 5 regular attacks, including Grasping Claws, although this is somewhat random. During Flower phase, she can spawn 4 vertical lines of flowers, 2 lines of rotten flowers with flies, and 2 lines of regular flowers. These regular flowers indicate a safe quadrant you can stand in. If you leave the quadrant towards the rotten flowers, you will be rapidly damaged for 4 to 8 damage each tick, healing the Nightmare for the damage you take. The easiest way to avoid this is to stand towards the outside center of Nightmare when she starts to spawn these, and if flowers don't spawn underneath you, run to the nearest safe set of flowers. You can stand on top of the regular flowers, as these tiles are also safe. This is a very simple attack to deal with in a solo. In a group setting, you will want to place your tank on one set of flowers and the rest of your group on the other set to avoid melee attacks. During the totem phase, these can be quite annoying, but you can still hit all 4 totems from the quadrant using long-range casting. If you walk to the center tile, you can hit all 4 totems from that position. Her other special attacks during this phase are Husks. She spawns 2 Husks, each having 20 health. These freeze you in place and attack you with magic and ranged attacks. The skinny Husks shoot blue projectiles, which are magic, and the fat Husks shoot green projectiles that are ranged attacks. If Nightmare uses Grasping Claws while you are frozen, she usually won't put a portal underneath you. Although I have had twice where the portal spawned anyway. I think she simply doesn't target you with the guaranteed portal under you, allowing random spawns to spawn underneath you if unlucky. Husks have a decent defense against mage and ranged, but are weak to melee. They do a small amount of damage from 1 to 15, but both of these attacking you on top of Nightmare attacks very quickly adds up. The best way of dealing with these is pray magic when these come out and immediately start attacking the Husks, swapping prayers to whatever Nightmare attacks you with, then back to magic. If you notice there are only fat Husks, pray ranged instead. You need to be prepared to catch melee attacks from Nightmare while killing the Husks, but it is better to protect against the Husks and catch melee attacks than pray melee and take their attacks full force. Be extremely careful you don't allow Husks to spawn as you charge the 4th and final totem, as Nightmare will spawn Sleepwalkers, but you won't be able to move. If you are stuck in this situation, you can still kill the walkers with magic, but you will miss your chance to spec with SGS. During her next phase, Parasite phase, she loses flowers and Husks, but adds 2 more special attacks. This is by far the hardest phase due to her first special attack, Parasites. This is also by far her most dangerous special attack. Nightmare will lean back and cough up a parasite that will fly towards you. This will infect you and require you to cure disease, either with a Sandfew dose or Relicum's Balm. If you click your health orb, your character will automatically drink a dose of cure. After 3 more attacks from Nightmare, the parasite will burst out of your chest, damaging you in the process, and rapidly healing Nightmare every 4 ticks for 10 to 80 health. If you forgot to cure a disease, it will burst from your chest and hit you for about a 70, as well as giving the parasite additional health. The parasite has 40 health and is weak to crush, but does not have insane defense like Nightmare. The parasite will have 80 health if you missed your disease cure. If you have a special attack, now is a good time to use a Claw Spec, as it will almost always one-shot the parasite, preventing Nightmare from healing too much. Otherwise, rush over and attack it with your Bludgeon. I will typically count the 3 attacks after I've been infected, and after her 3rd attack, run underneath her to spawn the parasite under her. If the parasite is under her, it cannot heal her, and the pathing can cause it to stay under her for a period of time, allowing you to kill the parasite without it healing Nightmare at all. Be careful doing this, as sometimes she uses grasping claws and it will damage you if you do not run back out of her. I also have not found a consistent way of blocking the parasite, as sometimes it will just immediately path out of her and start healing her. Although I'm sure there has to be a method that I don't know about to make this consistent. If this is found later, I will pin a comment about it. Do whatever you can to kill the parasite ASAP. If it heals her 5 times, it will have invalidated almost all of the damage you did before she spawned parasites. If parasites spawn but can't heal anything, say the totems are charged or not damaged at all, or Nightmare Shield has just been broken, they will attack you with ranged and magic attacks instead. This is a far better alternative to them healing anything, so if possible, try to kill your target before they spawn. If you kill all 4 totems before the parasite bursts out, tank the parasite and kill the sleepwalker first, then kill the parasite. Parasites have fairly high mage defense, so if they spawn during totem phase, swap to melee instead. Her other special attack is Curse. This is indicated by her causing a pink glow on your screen, at which point your protection prayers will be altered for 5 attacks. This simply shifts your prayers 1 to the right, so mage is ranged, ranged is melee, and melee is mage. This is always the same. This just takes some getting used to. Make sure you count 5 attacks so you know when your prayers will be back to normal and you don't get caught off prayer. Of course, she can also still use these specials during totems, so make sure you are watching for her curse during that as well. Nightmare will almost always use Grasping Claws after these 5 attacks, but there are times where she doesn't, and it's caught me off guard, so make sure you're still paying attention. Moving on to her final phase, which is by far the easiest. She no longer can curse you or spawn parasites, but now has 2 final special attacks. Her first I call Truck. She simply hops in the ground and teleports to a side of the arena. She will then blast forward and run you over if you are in the way, with a max hit over 50. This is fairly easy to avoid. Make sure you are vigilant and prepared to run out of the way when she trucks forward. If you're waiting for her to run and are safely out of the way, spend your time running to where she will end up so you waste less time not attacking. Her other special attack is Mushrooms. She will spawn these all over the arena in a checkerboard pattern. If you step within 1 tile of these, they will pop, preventing you from running for 5 attacks from Nightmare, and reducing your attack speed by 1 tick with all weapons. This basically means you lose 1 bludgeon hit if you get hit by a mushroom. You have about 2 ticks to get away from mushrooms when they spawn, so always try to avoid them for your DPS's sake. Watch out for Grasping Claws, as she will almost always use this special attack at least once while mushrooms are active, and you have very little space to work with when mushrooms are out. Try to determine a tile you can move to that is safe for mushrooms so you can continue DPSing even while claws are active. Be careful to not touch a mushroom later than when they spawn, as the inability to run can coincide with her Truck special attack, making it very difficult to avoid. If you have no way of avoiding mushrooms due to unlucky positioning, just take the mushrooms and keep attacking. They do 0 damage and just waste some DPS. In a group setting, the mushroom effect can be spread by walking next to another player, similar to Ohm's burn attack. So try to make sure you don't spread it. After you have charged the final 3rd set of totems, you will finally have killed Nightmare, and you can pick up your loot. In a group, the person who did the most damage will receive big bones. In a solo, you obviously will always be the MVP. The person who got big bones has a 5% increased chance to receive a jar, clue scroll, or Nightmare pet. Solos are actually the most profitable method of killing Nightmare, as the chance of a rare drop is the same from 1 to 5 players. Each additional player after 5 has an additional 1% roll at a second rare drop. Having more players than 5 is much more inefficient, so most people will form groups of 1 to 5 players. After a kill, if you have an ult, you can either leave Nightmare and have the ult trade you supplies, or just stay inside waiting the timer out and have the ult enter and trade you, then have the ult leave. If your ult has high magic and lunars, you can cast Energy Transfer and Heal Other to fully heal your main and give you Spec back. If you brought enough supplies on the ult for multiple kills, you can just have it cast Dream outside Nightmare as well to restore it back to full health as you continue fighting Nightmare. The easiest point to run an ult back to the bank is during the 3rd phase. You'll have about 5 minutes to restock your ult and run back if you do this. A solo takes about 20 minutes to finish. To get 100 Nightmare kills, which is about the average drop rate for a rare on average, will take you about 34 hours if you're doing them really, really fast. So make sure you're prepared for a long grind if you plan to do any Nightmare. And that's it for the Nightmare Guide. Hopefully this info helps you secure some solos and make some massive gains. Leave a like if you liked the video, and or subscribe. Thanks guys.